Hi, this is Dean Porter Nelson with Enterprise, and I'm joined by my colleague Rosa Ortiz. I'm the Senior Program Director here in the Chicago Market Office, and we're excited today to host this Chicago Market webinar for prospective applicants that are looking at projects in the Chicago metro area. We're going to go for about an hour, aiming to wrap up around noon today. Before we get into the formal presentation, I did want to give everyone the opportunity who is joined into the webinar to just briefly introduce yourselves, and then we have a few folks here in the room. So if you can just say your name, the organizations that you work for, and whether or not you've seen the letter of interest, which is now posted to the Enterprise website.
Maybe you can start with the people here in person.
Hi, this is Liz Dunn with Mercy Housing Lakefront, and I have taken a quick look at it.
Thank you.
Good morning, Torrance Moore, TMA Consulting. I have not looked at it yet.
Folks on the webinar.
This is Paul Cusimano from CNT in Chicago.
Hi, Paul.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Paul. It's Mary Penn over at TRP.
Mary, how you doing?
Good.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Anyone else joining us?
Folks just joining, just saying your name, organization, whether you've seen the LOI yet.
I'm Katie McLaughlin from Tesco Associates, standing in for Scott Goldstein.
Welcome, Katie.
Hi, I'm Laura Wetter with the Garfield Park Community Council.
Hi, Laura. Anyone else? Diane, did you want to say hi?
Sure, I was thinking about that. This is Diane Westcott. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is Diane Westcott. I'm one of the grants specialists here at Enterprise, and I'm located in our Columbia, Maryland office.
Thanks for joining us today.
Okay, so it seems like we have a few other people on the phone as well, and so thanks to everyone who did introduce themselves. Because of some of the feedback noise, at this time I will mute folks who are on the phone. We will go through the presentation, and then we will unmute folks to allow for comments and questions and any other feedback. I'm going to take it away. Anything else folks would like to add before we get into the formal presentation?
No, I think Amy said hi as well for Bricker Night.
Oh, good. Okay. If folks can just mute their own microphones in Blue Jeans, especially if you have any background noise, that would be helpful, just so that we can minimize the amount of feedback. Thanks so much.
Thanks for noting that.
Yeah, we appreciate we didn't go through the whole presentation and not have anyone hear it. So, yes. So anyways, back to the purpose of the webinar. We want to provide an overview of the Chicago market-specific areas of interest for the request for letters of interest. We're going to review some information about the grant program and the application. Please disregard the mention of an August 1st webinar. There's going to be a May 10th webinar. I think I corrected all the other slides, but I missed this one. There will be a May 10th webinar that will be coming through our national team. And of course, we are also recording this webinar, and we will send out the PowerPoint. So if you miss any information throughout the course of the webinar, don't worry, there'll be another opportunity to review the recording and the PowerPoint presentation. So some information about enterprise community partners. We have been around for more than 30 years, and we have introduced solutions through public-private partnerships with financial institutions, governments, community groups, and other partners that collectively share our vision that one day every person will have an affordable home in a vibrant community filled with promise and the opportunity for a good life. So we like to share that background about Enterprise, where we're coming from, and we know that many of you are doing work to make that possible every day. So we thank you for joining us on this webinar and learning about this resource to help you do that type of work. About the program that we're sharing on today, the funding that we have available at this time is made available through HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, through their Section 4 Capacity Building for Community Development program. And so they pass those funds through to Enterprise, and we in turn set priorities based on our on-the-ground expertise and presence in different communities around the nation, as well as throughout the rest of the country. And our aim in administering this program, and HUD's aim, is to enhance the technical and administrative capabilities of community development corporations and community housing development organizations. And we're aiming to help you carry out community development and affordable housing activities for the benefit of families and low-income persons at or below 80% of area median income. So they can be housing activities, they can be other types of activities, but we do, in order to be eligible, they do need to benefit those low to moderate income people in your region. And an overview of the request for letters of interest. This is a two-step process. We have the request for letters of interest right now. And then we will invite groups to submit a full application. We do recommend, of course, that you read the entire letter of interest request because there will be additional information beyond what we can share in our short webinar today. So once again, some threshold requirements. The activities that you have in your grant need to address the needs of families and persons who meet the low-income definition of 80% of area median income or lower. Area median income does vary by region, so you'll want to look up what that is for your particular region. Hopefully, if you're on the phone today, that is Chicago, and so you'll look up the area median income for the Chicago region and calculate 80% of that, and you can see if that matches up with the kind of project that you're proposing. So I wanted to go over the difference between the Chicago market and the national request for letters of interest program areas because there is an important distinction, and we are primarily sharing about the Chicago market areas. As I mentioned earlier, there is another webinar on May 10th, and you can learn more about the national program areas there. And in addition to that, we're lucky enough to have Diane Westcott on the phone, who is part of our National Grants and Contracts team. And so she can also be a resource to you in this webinar and outside of this webinar if you need to get the right information about the national program areas. And so I also wanted to note that in addition to the 2 program areas here in Chicago, there are 4 other program areas nationally for a total of 6 areas. And in addition to that, it's important to note that if your organization is located outside of the Chicago area, that you would want to apply through any one of those 6 program areas, and you would want to apply based on your best project out of all 6 areas. If you are located in Chicago or in the Chicago metro area, which we'll define later, you'll want to pay close attention to our priorities here. And you can choose to submit applications that focus on multiple program areas. So for example, maybe you have a TOD project, but you feel like there's a lot of sustainability elements in it, like stormwater management. You will just want to choose one program area when you submit. You'll be required to do that on the online application, but you will also want to include those other elements of your application that you feel are important and relevant to the project. So to define the Chicago geography, the Chicago Market Office will review applications from the 7-county Chicago metro area. That includes Cook, DuPage, Kane, Kendall, Lake, McHenry, and Will counties. This information is also found in the LOI request under the market geographies and market priorities and geographies of interest section for Chicago. Anything else to add so far, Rosa, before we get into the programmatic priorities?
No. Maybe, do you want to take questions now? Maybe a little bit later?
I think that we could go through the programmatic priorities unless you think it'd be helpful to answer questions about geographies now or about anything else.
I mean, I had one question and you answered it about being able to apply for multiple program areas.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
So you apply, you choose one, and then but that one proposal can have different components. So if you wanted to choose like transit-oriented development as the category that you're applying for, you would choose that one. But your project could have green components to it. It could have, obviously, it would be under transit-friendly or transit-rich environment, and maybe you would have, something around, health or vulnerable populations as well. Okay. Yeah, but you would pick one.
Right. So can you do apply for Chicago and then a national program as well or area?
Only if it's two different geographies. So if your project is in Chicago, then you would apply in the Chicago ones. But if your project is somewhere else outside of Chicago, then you would apply under the national.
But so if you have a project that would count as TOD, but you also have elements of it that are relevant to national priorities besides building and designing sustainable communities, do you still want to hear about that?
I think it would be helpful for you to talk about those elements of your project when you submit the LOI, but if you're submitting for a project in Chicago, then we would want you to select one of those two primary program areas, and then, like I said earlier, go into those additional details that was in your application. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So since we've had a few questions here in person, are there folks on the phone that have questions? And just make sure to unmute yourself before you pose those questions.
And then, I think, Torrance, to your question, I wonder if Diane would have, another perspective, or anyone else from our enterprise team. Say, for instance, there is, correct me if I'm wrong, if there is a vulnerable population is a topic area that's national but not local. Your question is, can you apply for vulnerable populations even though your project is in Chicago? Is that correct?
Well, I think it was more along what Liz was going with. If it's one of those vulnerable populations, and then it would also touch on a national priority.
Yeah, you would include it all in that application under the priority for Chicago and one of those two. Okay.
Okay, so I think we'll move on. Not hearing any other questions at this point. But to get into our priorities for the Chicago metro area, the first one is equitable transit-oriented development, and I'd like to have Rosa actually share that overview.
Yeah, so I think many Chicagoans and many people in the region can identify this time and place that we are in right now as a bit of a crossroads where we are experiencing a lot of reflections of inequity, both racial and economic inequity, and all the energy that is also being put into communities to actually make a difference. And how do we make all of that happen in a way that is actually aligned and where we're using important assets that we have in the region. So one of our key and most important assets is our transit infrastructure, right? It is existing, it's built, it's running throughout our entire area. And so the goal that we're wanting to focus is how do we then maximize this valuable asset of our transportation system and build upon that to actually arrive or get at economic and racial inequities, health, arts and culture, and climate resiliency. So we really are focusing around areas that are currently well served by transit and could benefit from A, affordable housing, or B, housing strategies or redevelopment strategies, community development strategies around those topic areas that are close to transit. Do you take to the next, move to the next slide? Examples of the kind of work that you might want to consider are a housing strategy to retain residents and to improve the quality of life of existing residents and homeowners, both renters and homeowners, in areas that are well served by transit. It could also address some of the quality of life and public safety issues through public arts, a public arts project, or a stormwater garden installation, community gardens as well, all that are located within a half-a-mile radius of a train station.
And
Train station only, not dedicated bus line or
we're really focusing right now on train station. If you feel strongly about any one particular component that's a bus station or well serviced by any other public transportation infrastructure that's existing, we're happy to review that. But I think in our priorities, we have been looking at trains, transit station in terms of train access as our key priority. We see that as a strong spine, if you can think of it that way, where if we're advancing development around transit stations that are trained, our train system can also help connect people in a really strong way. So even more specifically, we are looking at priority projects and programs within a half-a-mile radius in 4 different areas. So on the north side, it's the Logan Square Blue Line station. On the west side, it's the Blue Line Kedzie Homan Square station. Also on the west side is the Green Line Kedzie station. And then on the south side, along the Green Line, is 47th through Cottage Grove stations. And then the Pink Line California stop. Yes.
How did you arrive at these stations?
That is a great question. So I think the slide after this talks a little bit about an initiative that's currently taking place. It's called Elevated Chicago. Elevated Chicago is a collaborative of a variety of different partners, 9 steering committee members right now and growing. And these 4 different areas were identified as high opportunity areas that provide different typologies that can be seen throughout the region. And if we're able to actually support and advance development in these 4 different typologies, I think we'll be able to replicate that work throughout our train system. So that's a little bit of the background in terms of why these 4 areas were selected. And it's really meant to think about different typologies that can then be replicated else.
I don't know that we have another slide in here. Did you see one in your PowerPoint?
So if you go up on the examples, at the bottom there is a website
Oh, okay. You said after this. I think maybe we were referring to the one before this. Okay.
So this one, at the bottom of this slide, there is a link to a website that's called sparkhub.org. And if you follow that to the Chicago page, you will see the specific information that provides the background as to why, the half-a-mile radius, why these 4 different areas have been identified. So they are priority areas, but we are accepting applications from other places. If you feel strongly about them, you can let us know the story around that train station or that transit hub, and let us know how and what is happening in that community that you think you'd like supported. And so that is open to other areas, and the areas again are within the 7-county region.
And the examples, if I understand correctly, these are just illustrative examples,
Exactly.
But strategies can be much broader and customized to particular communities in these.
Absolutely. We welcome your thoughts on what you think is appropriate that could advance equity, health, arts and culture, as well as climate resiliency. I think that's it for our first priority area, or we have a second one.
Thanks, Rosa. So to share about our second priority for this RFP, building and designing sustainable communities. This is a priority that has been consistent for the Chicago market. And we've funded a number of projects in the Chicago region as well as in the Midwest in this priority area over the past years since this office has been open in 2011. So it has been a consistent priority for us, and we continue to refine this one as well as the priority on equitable transit-oriented development. So we're excited about both of them. Think that projects this year will build on much of the great work that's happened in the past. So for this area, we are looking for projects that create sustainable communities through improvements to existing real estate portfolios, new real estate developments, and through neighborhood and community level initiatives. And I will note that organizations who receive funding in this area will also receive technical assistance and benefit from cohort learning opportunities with other grantees. And we've had, to date, 3 cohorts in a program called the Enterprise Sustainability Exchange. Those groups have received the grant as well as technical assistance and opportunity to learn from other cohort members. I will note that we're open to applications from past cohort members as well as new organizations when we look at this criteria. So you're not disqualified if you've already received support in this area. We feel that new organizations as well as returning organizations can add to these cohorts and benefit from new types of technical assistance. So examples of projects and initiatives. We're interested in these projects and initiatives as well as other ones that you may feel fit into this category. So first, water efficiency, specifically projects that look at water efficiency assessments to inform retrofits of existing buildings, examples of different types of staff training that you might provide internally or contract with external parties to provide to property management, maintenance, or other staff members on water conservation strategies. We are interested in implementation of water conservation best practices and procedures across real estate portfolios. We've seen gray water reuse take place in some cases, and any other strategies that might reduce overall water use in buildings. This is particularly important as we see the increasing cost of water in the city of Chicago and the Chicago metro area. Many groups are finding that their water bills are higher than anticipated, and so we're encouraging folks to embrace water efficiency strategies to address that problem. Stormwater management, I think, there is overlap between the building and designing sustainable communities category and the ETOD category. In this area, we provided that as one example of a strategy that could be helpful, and that's because things like rain gardens and green infrastructure not only help to manage stormwater, they can also help to beautify communities. And there's a number of examples of that throughout the Chicago metro area. I'll also mention that the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District does expect to release a solicitation for municipalities and other government agencies to apply to them and actually, for funding for green infrastructure projects. And so if you think that you have an opportunity to partner with a municipality or another government agency, even like a school district, potentially on one of those types of initiatives, it might be interesting to explore that and talk to that government agency or the Water Reclamation District as you consider preparing your application. Energy efficiency, I'm interested in some examples here are energy assessments to reform retrofits, staff training on energy conservation strategies, implementation of best practices on energy conservation that reduce overall energy use in buildings. Some other examples, and as you can see, we do invite a broad array of projects in this area, and so these are giving you examples of how you can conceptualize this concept of sustainable communities. Things like green design, where you're prioritizing green design for new buildings, rehabs, and making improvements to existing buildings. Renewable energy, I mentioned stormwater management, and I think that overlaps with this neighborhood scale green infrastructure. If there are strategies that look at strategies like district stormwater or district energy in a larger community area, those would be compelling to this particular application process. And then in the past, we've also seen strategies around urban agriculture and other strategies that repurpose vacant land, improve access to healthy food, and beautify communities. Finally, as the issue of lead contamination continues to be one that is covered in the news media in Chicago and continues to be one that public agencies as well as nonprofit groups are increasingly trying to address, we do want to offer the opportunity to create healthy living environments with a particular emphasis on strategies that might reduce or eliminate lead contamination from water, paint, or other sources across buildings. So if you have a compelling idea of a project that creates healthy living environments in your portfolio, then that would also be, that could also fit into this category. We did want to highlight that as something that we also see as part of building and designing sustainable communities, and also something that is highlighted in the Enterprise Green Communities criteria for new construction and rehab. There are also many other strategies to create healthy communities, such as reducing indoor air quality or using healthy materials in buildings, and those would also be relevant. We do encourage you to refer to the Green Communities criteria if you are trying to understand a bit more about this concept. So the geographic priority and additional priorities for this category, the geographic priority is the 7-county Chicago Metro. We don't have the same level of fine-grained additional priority for those station areas in this category, but we certainly do encourage projects that connect to transit, bike infrastructure, or walkable neighborhoods, because that does contribute to a sustainable community. If you're focusing on a real estate portfolio or a new project that is connected, it does contribute to sustainability. And then in addition, we do encourage the use of benchmarking and data-driven strategies in all these areas.
And then just a quick update, the Green Communities criteria can be found and downloaded from the Enterprise Grants webpage, and that's located at www.enterprisegr.org. enterprisecommunity.org/grants. Thank you, Diane.
Rosa, do you want to add anything about the priorities before we get into some of the reminders about timelines and get into questions? Okay. So the timeline, some important dates that are forthcoming, the letters of interest issue date, which has taken place on May 1st. So we're getting this information about our priorities promptly so that you can begin working on your application. And you have until May 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern time to submit. Please do not submit after that timeline because we won't be able to consider your application. Get your application in as early as you can is our recommendation. And
notice the time where it is. It's not Central Time, so please note.
Eastern Time, so 7 p.m. Central Time. Maybe just put a calendar reminder for 5 p.m. Central Time.
For noon. Noon on the 31st as a deadline.
And then there will be a notice of an invitation to submit full applications in July, and then a submission deadline for full applications in August. Diane, do you have anything else to add about this timeline or any of the important dates?
I think the webinar, the national webinar, if people want to note that. Diane, do you have info or that you want to share on that one?
I just want to reiterate the importance of the deadline on the 31st, and we in the grants team strongly recommend that you applicants even try to go in the day before to submit, just in case something gets weird or there's some kind of technical glitch. That will give applicants a way to contact us through the RFP mailbox so we can get back to you and it won't be, very last minute.
Great. And then did you want to share anything about the national webinar where people could learn about the other national initiative components?
Sure. So as Dean and Rosa mentioned, we're going to have a national, I think it's set for a 90-minute webinar on May 10th. And during that webinar, we will be specifically going through, kind of reviewing the whole LOI to present a very comprehensive view of the program areas and also additional requirements that will be touched upon in the appendix areas. And we'll have a very robust Q&A period for questions. So we strongly urge everyone to attend that. If you're a new grantee or a past grantee with Enterprise, please try to attend that. It's at 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And the registration link is on the market supplement for Chicago, but it's also located on our grants webpage, which, as Rosa said, was www.enterprisecommunity.org/grants. And there are, not only is the application and narrative and other materials available for download, but if you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a nice area of resources, guides, and things that you can download to reference. So we encourage you to look at that area also.
Great. Diane, since you're on the on talking right now and have the floor virtually, there were a couple of organizations that don't know if they qualify as a CDC or not. Can you provide some guidance as to how they can go about to confirm whether they are an eligible applicant or not?
Sure. So over the past few rounds, we have found that there are organizations who are CDCs or may fall under the criteria of a CDC, but not quite the formal definition as set out by HUD. So there is a way for enterprise to determine if your organization is eligible to receive Section 4 funding. And in order to do that, you can reference in the LOI Appendix, I think it's Appendix A. I think most everything is under Appendix A for us. The kind of the supplemental characteristics that you would need to fall under. One of them is sufficient provision of your bylaws and your organizational charter that enterprise through the grants team would examine and through evaluation make sure that you qualify to receive our funding. So we kind of make that determination. One of the things that you can do to get that information to us is send it through the RFP mailbox, which I think is on another slide, but it is rfp@enterprisecommunity.org. And that mailbox is monitored by our grants team, and someone will get back to you very promptly with a determination if you are eligible to go ahead and apply for our funding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that gets at one of the reminders on this slide about meeting the threshold requirements. So thanks, Diane. And in addition to that, we want to highlight that all the documents are available on Enterprise's website. You can only submit one proposal per organization and apply for one area listed in the LOI. As mentioned before, you might be able to touch on how your application intersects with other areas, but you do need to choose one primary program area. And then in addition to that, we need you to answer all the questions in the LOI narrative. We need you to submit via the online submission form, and we also need you to submit your application on time, as we have discussed before. Anything else, Diane?
No, not at this time. Yep, I think we covered everything.
Thanks. So there were some more reminders in the PowerPoint that I think I got from the grants and contracts team. So thanks for that, Diane, and your team. So late submissions won't be accepted. If you send us something in paper, it won't be accepted. There are resources on our website. There's a submission guide and an FAQ available that are on the grants website of Enterprise. And then, of course, Diane mentioned, sending the questions to rfp@enterprisecommunity.org. I finally did want to highlight very quickly an upcoming event that Enterprise is helping to host and promote with the Chicago Area Fair Housing Alliance. And we're inviting county, municipal, and public housing authority administrators, as well as other leaders and contributors to the field of fair housing and community development. There will be a comprehensive fair housing training, and you can register free of charge on Eventbrite. This is happening on May 12th. And now we open up the floor for questions. Of course, you can also send those by email to me about the program areas, and then if there are general questions about the RFP, to rfp@enterprisecommunity.org. So I invite, at this time, we do have 18 minutes until noon, and we want to use as much of that time as everyone would like to answer questions about the RFP. So if you're on the phone, please do not hesitate to unmute yourself and answer and ask any questions you may have.
I think I just wanted to add, while people are getting their questions ready, we try to do this as simple as possible. Hopefully you appreciate that, or we're making it as easy as possible for all of you. The LOI should be relatively straightforward and short in terms of your response. And the following step as well should be relatively straightforward and easy, hopefully for everyone. Sometimes I think it helps to have a range of the grants and perhaps the number of grants that might be issued. So I'm happy to give a ballpark figure for that if that is helpful. So I think this year we're looking at grants at about 40 to 60K, so $60,000, and we'll likely award anywhere from 8 to 10. Last year, how many applications do you recall that we received?
Mm-hmm. I think we had 40 applications last year, and I think that we were able to find between 14 and 16 projects. I don't remember the exact.
Yeah, so definitely, luckily we've been able to fund about 1 in 3 or 1 in 4. And so that hopefully also gives you a sense of the applications. We've had really good applications, I will say, and so hopefully that is reflective of kind of our specificity and our ability to be there to support in any thoughts or ideas on things. But also, we know that applying for grants and taking time out of your time to think through opportunities that could be a match is valuable time. So we are trying to make this as easy and as simple as possible for everyone to participate.
I will also say that if your organization works outside of the Chicago area, in addition to in the Chicago area, and you want to submit nationally, then you're welcome to do that. Our national initiatives team and the team at Enterprise also reviews applications that are outside of the specific defined market geography, so you're still certainly eligible. I do see some questions coming in via chat, so if that's easier for folks, you can also submit your questions there. A question from Mary. That question is, could you review again the broad difference between applying for national versus Chicago funding? I think I may have just incidentally covered that somewhat. Just to reiterate and build on what I've already said, the difference between applying for national versus Chicago funding. The Chicago funding, we do encourage anyone who is located in the Chicago area, and I think, well, actually, I'll say anyone who is looking at a project in the Chicago area will be considered by the Chicago market team, and we do want to see applications in our 2 priority areas, building and designing sustainable communities and equitable TOD. And so if you're in the Chicago area, we encourage you to do that. If you are looking at a project somewhere else in Illinois, maybe rural Illinois, 6 hours from Chicago, or in Minnesota or Wisconsin, then we still encourage you to submit an application, and we encourage you to look at the priorities that are outlaid in the national RFP. Rosa or Diane, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, Mary or others, I think the webinar on May 10th as well will be really helpful. That one's going to focus entirely on the national initiatives piece, and I think that might shed a little bit more light on what those other areas are and whether your project is very well aligned with those kinds of projects. Even though it's in the Chicago area, I think you would still be able to apply and say, look, this particular project is a strong, let's say, health priority, and it's responding to everything that the national initiatives is looking for. Then you would maybe just choose to go for that national component instead of the Chicago local priorities. Is that clear? I see some maybe questions on there.
I may have kind of created a little bit of confusion because I think I said something a little bit different than what you did, Rosa.
Okay.
So sorry about that. Diane, do you have anything else to add on that? I think I've seen you writing a couple of things in chat, Diane.
Hi, sorry, I had to unmute myself twice just to make sure. Yeah, it's important. It's important to note that we're accepting only 1 application per per applicant, and that the grants are scheduled to begin on September 1st. So this is important to note because as you're preparing your, proposed activities for the Chicago market or outside of that market in a national perspective, you want to, keep that timeline in mind because there might be activities that you might want to seek funding for that wouldn't fit within that timeline. So please be aware of that.
But I guess it sounded like what you had said, Dean, that if we're applying for a project in Chicago, you're going to be reviewing it based on your priorities.
That's
then
correct.
What you said sounded like if we have a project that's in healthy communities, which isn't one of the Chicago priorities, that maybe we still apply under that, but that national
would be the
would
ones
review
reviewing
that?
it. So then you'll be competing nationally with any other, health initiatives.
So it would need to rise to the top above other projects that were submitted nationally.
Yeah. And Diane, I wonder if you can, do you have the national priorities in front of you that you can maybe talk about, at least share which ones they are so that people can learn a little bit more about what those national priorities are?
By that, you mean the program areas?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, let me pull them all. So Dean had mentioned previously that there are 6 program areas, and I don't have them up on a screen that I can show you, but I can read them to you. So first one is building and designing sustainable communities. Oh. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I think I just might have lost the presentation, but at least I'm still on. Okay. First area is building and designing sustainable communities. Second area is another part of the Chicago priority, equitable transit-oriented development. The third is health and housing. Fourth is affordable housing production and preservation. Fifth is organizational sustainability. And sixth is rural and Native American initiative. So in our May 10th webinar, we will be going over these priorities in detail, and there is, of course, not only descriptions in the LOI, but also common examples of each one of these program areas. If I begin to speak on each one and give a description, it's probably going to run very long. So I would say that they will be covered very well during the May 10th webinar.
That's correct. So can you share your perspective on then, like if we're applying for a Chicago project but for one of these national priorities, how competitive would that be? How many people apply in that type of situation? And, do you have any information on what that looked like last year?
Last year we had, we didn't have a lot of applicants from outside the Chicago area, but within Illinois that were just who were reviewed by the national team and fell outside of the Chicago priority. So I know I'm probably not being clear about that.
Diane, I think she's asking about whether,
like Native and rural, for example. If how many?
Is that what you're asking about?
No, not asking about Native and rural.
So just correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're asking if you want to submit a health project that you do not feel meets our Chicago priorities and you want to do that project in Chicago, you're wondering how competitive
is that what would the chances of that be? Yeah.
So
I honestly can't answer that because I wasn't very involved last year as being new to the team. I wasn't very involved in the evaluation and the how many applications there were.
So it varies. Every year
Yes.
it varies, and the national initiatives have varied even in their scope and their interest every year. So my recommendation would be that if you feel you have a strong health or whatever other national initiative program that you feel very strongly about, you apply. But you only get to pick one. So if that's what you're going for, then go for that one. And, you know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we just talk about this offline.
I think that's fine, but I think other people will have that question anyway. So, you know, I think in general, look at the national categories that are on there, or national areas. If you feel strongly that you have a project, whether it's in the Chicago area or not, that ideally meets the requirements that that particular national initiative component is asking for, then apply for it. And
well said.
It's a, you know, it's a local project and it meets the transit-oriented development and the sustainability component, then apply for that one. Again, everybody has to make their own decisions. Just apply for one. I mean, you can't only apply for one. So read through them, you know, make your own decisions, and we're here to review your applications. And if you have additional comments or have other questions, you know, feel free to reach out or email the, you know, our email that we have for this particular request.
Thanks. So other questions that I see, there's a question from Patricia about what email to submit grants to. Diane, I think we'll go over that, or sorry, the National Initiative team will go over the application process in that webinar on May 10th. But Diane, do you have a brief answer to that?
Sure. Just as we did with the previous funding round, the application is actually an online application. So when you go to our grants page, up at the top of the page, you'll see there is a big yellow button that says apply. So when you're ready and you have your proposal, you're based on the LOI narrative form that is also located and downloadable on the webpage, when you have all your materials together, click that apply button. It'll take you to a very comprehensive form and fill that out, hit the apply button on the form, and you will even get, I believe you can ask for a copy of the submission that you just sent in, and you'll get a confirmation email that it went through successfully.
Another question, thank you, Diane. Another question that came up is Mary was asking, when will the national priorities / RFP be released? And this is it. So this is both national priorities and local priorities combined. So on page 2 of the document of our request for letters of interest, page 2 gives you a sense of program area 1, which is building and designing sustainable communities, program area 2, which is TOD, program area 3, which is health and housing, program area 4, which is affordable housing production and preservation, 5, organizational sustainability, and 6, rural and Native American initiatives. So again, this is both national and local. We received this feedback to combine them, and that's why we're combining them now. So this is both for national and for local.
Then there was a separate attachment that has more detail on
That's
it.
correct.
On the local priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just printed this out on.
In general, we suggest that you read the letter of interest in detail online, and then also attend that other webinar to try to get, make sure you have all the right information on that. So another question, the funding match. There is a question from Paul about whether that is required or suggested, and he's asking whether 1-to-1, 2-to-1, or 3-to-1 is required or suggested. Diane, do you have any insights on that?
Absolutely. So as many of you know, Enterprise has a match requirement from HUD, and as a result of our match requirement, we request that our grantees provide matching funds to help us meet our goal, and that would be a 3-to-1 match. So for every Section 4 dollar that the grantee receives, we ask for for it to correspond to 3 private dollars that can be submitted in match. So it is not a requirement at this time. It is a request.
For every one enterprise dollar, 3 private dollars.
Mm-hmm.
We're right at noon. We do still have a number, looks like 15 people on the phone though, so we want to be responsive to any additional questions folks have for the next few minutes. I'm flexible for a little bit, so ask away if you still have something you want to hear.
Hi, Paul Cusimano again from CNT. Where will this copy of this webinar be located? On the Enterprise website, or will there be an email link? Just because I know others will want to see it.
Yeah, great question. So, so we're recording it. We'd like to post the recording on the Chicago part of the Enterprise website, and we'll also email it out. Sorry, I heard another voice. Did someone else have something to add on that?
No, you go ahead, Dean.
Okay, so yeah, we'll be emailing it out to everyone who RSVP'd in advance, or anyone who sends me an email saying they want it. And then in addition to that, we'll be posting it on the Chicago part of the Enterprise website as soon as we're able, hopefully by the end of this week.
Thank you.
All right, feel free to ask any other questions online and reach out to us. Dean, do you want to put your info back up?
Yeah, I did have to take my info off briefly because I needed to see the questions that were coming up. So sorry that I removed that slide momentarily. Once again, general questions to rfp@enterprisecommunity.org, and then Chicago Market Program Area questions to me at dporter-nelson@enterprisecommunity.org. I'll be happy to answer those questions as best as I can, or I will pass them on to a team member who can get back to you as soon as they're able.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.